The graduation party was supposed to be a celebration. Instead, it became the night Rebecca Chen's family officially wrote her off as the family disappointment. While her cousins announced their acceptance letters to medical school and law programs, Rebecca quietly mentioned her new job at Sunrise Coffee, a local chain where she'd be earning $12 an hour serving lattes and pastries. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The silence that followed was deafening. Her Aunt Linda actually laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the backyard chatter. Her Uncle Robert shook his head in what Rebecca assumed was disappointment, and her own mother, Susan, forced a smile so brittle it could have shattered. What they didn't know was that Rebecca had been quietly building something extraordinary while they focused on their traditional definitions of success. What they couldn't see was the seven-figure balance sitting in her investment accounts, carefully accumulated through years of strategic trading and a cryptocurrency investment that had exploded beyond her wildest dreams. Rebecca had always been different from the rest of the Chen family. While her relatives pursued medicine, law, and engineering with single-minded determination, she found herself drawn to patterns, numbers, and the fascinating world of financial markets. At 14, she'd started reading investment blogs instead of fashion magazines. By 16, she was paper trading stocks with imaginary money, testing strategies and learning from every mistake. When she turned 18 and gained access to her small inheritance from her late grandfather, she'd quietly opened her first real trading account. The Chen family had immigrated to Portland 2 generations ago, building their reputation on academic excellence and professional achievement. Rebecca's father, David, was a successful cardiologist who worked 70-hour weeks at Portland General Hospital. Her mother, Susan, had given up her own medical career to support David's practice and manage their family's social standing within the tight-knit Chinese-American community. Every family gathering was an exercise in competitive accomplishment, where cousins compared GPAs, test scores, and acceptance letters like trading cards. Rebecca's older brother Kevin had set the standard early, graduating summa cum laude from Stanford before entering Harvard Medical School. Her younger sister Annie was following close behind, maintaining a perfect GPA while preparing for the MCAT. The expectation was clear. Chen children became doctors, lawyers, or engineers. They didn't serve coffee for minimum wage. The morning after her graduation party disaster, Rebecca sat in her small apartment near Portland State University, staring at her laptop screen. Her investment portfolio showed a balance that would make most people dizzy, $2.3 million across various accounts. The bulk of it had come from an early investment in Ethereum when it was trading for less than $50. She'd put in $15,000 of her inheritance money her family assumed she'd wasted on college expenses and frivolous purchases. When Ethereum hit $4,000 per coin, Rebecca had quietly become a millionaire at 21. She'd diversified into other cryptocurrencies, tech stocks, and even some traditional blue-chip companies. Her trading strategies had evolved from beginner's luck to sophisticated analysis, and she'd managed to grow her portfolio even during market downturns. But none of that mattered to her family, because all they could see was her job application uniform and her failure to follow their predetermined path. Rebecca's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Lunch today at Golden Palace, family meeting, be there at noon." The tone was formal, cold, nothing like the warm messages Susan used to send. Rebecca knew what this meeting would be about. Her family had probably spent the night discussing what to do about their disappointing daughter, the one who'd thrown away her potential to serve coffee to strangers. Golden Palace was the Chen family's regular meeting spot, a traditional Chinese restaurant where they'd celebrated every major milestone and discussed every important decision. Rebecca arrived exactly at noon, finding her parents, Kevin, Annie, and several aunts and uncles already seated around their usual large round table. The conversation stopped when she walked in. Her Aunt Linda looked her up and down, taking in Rebecca's simple jeans and sweater with obvious disapproval. Her Uncle Robert was scrolling through his phone, probably checking on his son's latest medical school achievement. Her mother gestured to an empty chair with the kind of forced politeness reserved for unwelcome guests. "Rebecca," her father began without preamble, "we need to discuss your future. This coffee shop job is unacceptable for someone with your education and opportunities." His voice carried the authority he used with hospital residents, expecting immediate compliance. "It's honest work, Dad," Rebecca replied, keeping her tone respectful but firm. Kevin snorted from across the table. "Valuable skills, like memorizing latte recipes? Rebecca, you have a degree from Portland State. You could be applying to graduate programs or professional positions. Instead, you're choosing to waste your potential on a job any high school dropout could do." Aunt Linda leaned forward, her voice dripping with false concern. "Darling, we're worried about you. This isn't the Chen way. Your grandfather didn't sacrifice everything to come to America so his granddaughter could serve coffee. What will people think?" "What will people think?" Rebecca repeated, genuinely curious about her aunt's priorities. "That I'm working hard and paying my own bills?" "They'll think you failed," Uncle Robert said bluntly, finally looking up from his phone. "They'll think your parents raised a daughter who lacks ambition and direction. In our community, success is measured by professional achievement, not by how well you can make a cappuccino." Susan spoke for the first time since Rebecca had arrived, her voice carefully controlled. "We've discussed this as a family, and we think it would be best if you took some time to reconsider your choices. Perhaps you could move back home, retake the MCAT, and apply for medical school next year. Dr. Wong's daughter did something similar after her gap year." "I'm not taking a gap year, Mom. I'm living my life." Rebecca felt the familiar frustration building in her chest. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm 22 years old and perfectly capable of making my own decisions." Annie, who had been quietly observing the conversation, finally spoke up. "Rebecca, I don't understand why you're being so stubborn about this. We're offering to help you get back on track. Why would you choose to struggle financially when you could have a stable, respected career?" The irony was almost overwhelming. Rebecca was probably the most financially stable person at the table, but she couldn't explain that without revealing her secret. She'd learned years ago that discussing investment strategies or cryptocurrency gains with her family only led to lectures about gambling and risky behavior. "I'm not struggling," Rebecca said simply. "I'm doing fine." Her father's expression hardened. "Living paycheck to paycheck is not doing fine, Rebecca. Working for minimum wage with no benefits, no future, no security, that's struggling, whether you admit it or not." The meeting continued for another hour, with various family members taking turns expressing their disappointment and offering their solutions. Rebecca should go back to school. Rebecca should network with the family's professional connections. Rebecca should at least find a job with better growth potential, perhaps as a bank teller or administrative assistant. Throughout it all, Rebecca remained calm and polite, neither arguing nor agreeing. She understood their perspective, even if she disagreed with it fundamentally. They measured success by external markers, degrees, titles, salaries, social status. They couldn't comprehend that someone might choose a different path, especially one that appeared to lead downward rather than up. When the lunch finally ended, Rebecca hugged her family members goodbye, enduring their pitying looks and whispered comments. As she walked to her car, she heard her Aunt Linda telling her mother, "Don't blame yourself, Susan. Some children just don't have the drive to succeed." That evening, Rebecca sat in her favorite coffee shop, not the one where she worked, but a small independent place near her apartment, and opened her laptop. Her portfolio had gained another $15,000 during the day's trading session. She reviewed her positions, analyzed market trends, and planned her next moves. This was her real passion, her true skill, the work that energized and challenged her in ways that medical school never could. Her phone rang, interrupting her analysis. The caller ID showed Kevin's name, and Rebecca almost declined the call. But curiosity won out. "Hey, Kev," she answered. "Rebecca, I wanted to apologize for being harsh at lunch today," Kevin said, his voice softer than it had been at the restaurant. "I know we came on pretty strong, but we're genuinely worried about you." "I appreciate that," Rebecca replied, closing her laptop. "But I wish you could trust that I know what I'm doing." "It's hard to trust that when what you're doing looks like giving up," Kevin admitted. "From the outside, it looks like you're wasting your potential and settling for less than you deserve." "What if I told you that I'm exactly where I want to be?" Rebecca asked. "What if my goals are different from yours?" Kevin was quiet for a moment. "Then I'd ask what those goals are, because serving coffee doesn't seem like much of a goal to me." Rebecca considered telling him the truth. Kevin was the closest to her in age, the one she'd grown up playing video games with and sharing secrets. But she knew how he'd react. He'd either not believe her, or he'd lecture her about the risks of speculation and the importance of stable employment. "My goals are private for now," she said instead. "But I promise you, I'm not just drifting aimlessly." "Rebecca, if you're in some kind of trouble, if you owe money, or you're dealing with something you can't tell us about, we're family, we'll help you." The genuine concern in his voice almost broke her resolve. "I'm not in trouble, Kevin. I'm actually doing better than you might think." "Working minimum wage?" "Trust me." They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up, and Rebecca felt the weight of her secret more heavily than usual. She'd started keeping her financial success private out of a desire to avoid family drama and unsolicited advice. Now, that privacy was creating a different kind of drama, one where her loved ones genuinely believed she was failing. Over the next few weeks, Rebecca threw herself into both her coffee shop job and her trading activities. At Sunrise Coffee, she genuinely enjoyed the work. The customers were interesting, her coworkers were friendly, and the flexible schedule allowed her plenty of time to monitor the markets. She'd become skilled at reading technical charts during slow periods, making quick trades between rush hours. Her manager, Maria, was a single mother working her way through business school. Her coworker, Jake, was an aspiring musician who used his shifts to network with local artists and promote his band. These were people with dreams and ambitions that didn't fit traditional molds, and Rebecca found their company refreshing after years of achievement-obsessed family gatherings. But the family pressure continued. Her mother called twice a week with job listings she'd found online. Her father forwarded articles about the importance of career planning in your 20s. Annie sent her links to MCAT prep courses. The message was clear: they wouldn't give up on fixing her until she conformed to their expectations. The breaking point came during Kevin's engagement party. He'd proposed to his medical school girlfriend, Sarah, and the family had organized a celebration at the same country club where they'd held Rebecca's graduation party. Rebecca arrived in her best dress, hoping for one evening without career discussions. She should have known better. The party was filled with Kevin and Sarah's friends from medical school, plus the usual collection of Chen family members and family friends. Rebecca found herself cornered near the bar by Dr. Patel, a family friend who'd known her since childhood. "Rebecca, your mother tells me you're working in food service now," Dr. Patel said, with the kind of smile adults use when they're trying to be encouraging about something disappointing. "That's interesting. Are you planning to use that experience to apply for restaurant management positions?" "Not really," Rebecca replied, signaling the bartender for another drink. "I'm happy where I am." "Well, happiness is important," Dr. Patel agreed, though his tone suggested he thought happiness was a luxury Rebecca couldn't afford. "But at your age, you should also be thinking about building a foundation for your future. Have you considered medical administration? With your family's connections, I'm sure we could find you an entry-level position at the hospital." Before Rebecca could respond, her cousin Michael joined the conversation. Michael was a first-year resident in emergency medicine, riding high on the prestige of his position, despite working 100-hour weeks for barely more than minimum wage himself. "Aunt Susan mentioned you're working at a coffee shop," Michael said with barely concealed condescension. "That's gotta be tough, especially seeing everyone else moving forward with their careers." "Actually, I'm doing quite well," Rebecca said, her patience finally wearing thin. "Oh, come on, Rebecca," Michael laughed. "How well can you be doing on $12 an hour? I mean, I know money isn't everything, but let's be realistic here." Dr. Patel nodded sympathetically. Michael's right to be concerned about the financial aspect. Building wealth requires planning and professional growth. Service jobs simply don't provide the income potential you need for long-term security. Rebecca looked around the party, taking in the faces of successful doctors, lawyers, and engineers, all of whom were struggling with student loans, mortgage payments, and the endless pressure to maintain their expensive lifestyles. Most of them had negative net worth despite their impressive salaries. "What if I told you my net worth was higher than most people in this room?" Rebecca asked quietly. Both men laughed. Dr. Patel patted her shoulder patronizingly. "Rebecca, optimism is wonderful, but we need to be practical. A coffee shop salary simply can't compete with professional income. What if I could prove it? Rebecca pressed. Michael's expression grew more serious. Rebecca, if you're involved in something illegal or dangerous— I'm not, Rebecca interrupted. I'm involved in something you apparently can't imagine. Legal, ethical, and extremely profitable. The conversation was interrupted by Kevin calling for everyone's attention. He and Sarah stood at the front of the room, both glowing with happiness and success. Kevin thanked everyone for coming, talked about their future plans, and made jokes about the stress of medical school. As Rebecca watched her brother receive congratulations and admiration from the assembled crowd, she made a decision. She was tired of being pitied, tired of being seen as the family failure, tired of having her choices questioned and her intelligence doubted. It was time to stop hiding. The next morning, Rebecca called her mother and requested another family meeting. Susan sounded surprised but pleased, probably assuming Rebecca had finally come to her senses and was ready to discuss changing her life path. They met again at Golden Palace, the same configuration as before. Parents, siblings, aunts, and uncles gathered around the familiar round table. This time, however, Rebecca came prepared. She carried a leather portfolio containing printed statements from her various investment accounts, each page carefully organized and highlighted. She'd also brought her laptop, ready to show real-time account balances if necessary. "Thank you all for coming," Rebecca began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I know you've been concerned about my career choices and my financial future. I've asked you here today to address those concerns directly." Her father leaned forward expectantly. "Are you ready to discuss returning to school?" "I'm ready to discuss the truth about my situation," Rebecca replied. "But first, I want to understand something. What do you think constitutes financial success?" Uncle Robert answered immediately. "Stable income, job security, benefits, retirement planning, the fundamentals of middle-class stability." "And what annual income would you consider successful for someone my age?" Rebecca asked. "For someone fresh out of college, maybe 40 to 50,000, her mother suggested, with growth potential into six figures over time." Annie nodded agreement. "That's what most of my friends are targeting with their first jobs." Rebecca opened her portfolio and pulled out her most recent portfolio summary. "This document shows my current net worth," she said, sliding it to the center of the table. "As of yesterday's market close." Her father picked up the paper, his expression changing from patronizing patience to confusion to shock. He read the number twice before looking up at Rebecca with wide eyes. "This can't be accurate," he said quietly. "It is. $2.7 million across various investment accounts." The silence that followed was different from the disappointed quiet of their previous meetings. This was stunned disbelief. Kevin grabbed the paper from their father, scanning the numbers with the quick, analytical mind that had gotten him through medical school. "Rebecca, where did this money come from? This has to be some kind of mistake, or—" "It came from investment returns," Rebecca explained calmly. "I've been trading stocks and cryptocurrency for the past 6 years. What started as a $15,000 inheritance from grandfather has grown into what you see there." Aunt Linda's voice was barely a whisper. $2.7 million? Give or take, depending on market fluctuations. Some days it's more, some days it's less. But yes, that's the approximate amount. Her mother reached for the portfolio, pulling out additional pages that showed individual account balances, recent transactions, and historical performance. "Rebecca, I don't understand. If you have this much money, why are you working at a coffee shop?" "Because I enjoy it," Rebecca said simply. "Because it gives me flexible hours to focus on trading. Because my coworkers are good people and the work is honest. Because I don't need to work for money anymore, which means I can work for other reasons." Uncle Robert was shaking his head in disbelief. "This is impossible. You're telling us you made millions of dollars gambling on the internet?" "I'm telling you I made millions of dollars through careful research, strategic planning, and calculated risk-taking," Rebecca corrected. "The same skills you use in your medical practice, Dad, or that Kevin uses in his surgical training. Pattern recognition, decision-making under pressure, continuous learning." Annie looked overwhelmed. "But why didn't you tell us? Why let us worry about you and think you were failing?" Rebecca considered the question carefully. Because I knew how you'd react. You'd either not believe me, or you'd lecture me about the risks, or you'd try to manage my money for me. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do this before I proved it to anyone else. The conversation that followed was unlike any family discussion they'd ever had. Her relatives peppered her with questions about her investment strategies, her risk management, her future plans. Some were skeptical, demanding additional proof. Others were fascinated, wanting to understand how she'd achieved such success. Dr. Patel, who had joined them after being called by Susan, examined her portfolio with the careful attention he usually reserved for medical charts. "This is extraordinary," he admitted. "Rebecca, you've achieved at 22 what most people spend their entire careers trying to accomplish." But not everyone was ready to accept this new reality. Kevin remained suspicious, convinced there had to be some catch or hidden downside. "Rebecca, even if these numbers are real, this kind of success isn't sustainable. Markets crash, investments fail. What happens when you lose it all?" "What happens when you get sued for malpractice?" Rebecca countered. "What happens when your hospital downsizes? What happens when AI makes radiologists obsolete? Every career has risks, Kevin. At least I've diversified mine." Her father, who had been quietly studying the portfolio, finally spoke. "Rebecca, I owe you an apology. We all do. We made assumptions about your life based on limited information, and we were wrong." "You weren't wrong to be concerned," Rebecca replied. "You were wrong to assume that your definition of success was the only valid one." The family meeting lasted 3 hours, ending with a mixture of apologies, congratulations, and requests for investment advice. Rebecca felt simultaneously vindicated and exhausted. She'd proven her point, but she'd also fundamentally changed her relationship with her family. Over the following weeks, word of Rebecca's success spread through their extended family and social circle. The same people who had pitied her minimum wage job now sought her advice on cryptocurrency investments and stock picks. The irony wasn't lost on her that her value in their eyes had changed not because she was a different person, but because they now knew her bank balance. Some relationships improved. Kevin apologized for his condescension and began asking genuine questions about her trading strategies. Her parents started treating her decisions with respect rather than concern. Annie began exploring investment options for her own small savings. But other relationships became more complicated. Relatives who had barely spoken to her before suddenly wanted to maintain close contact. Family friends asked for loans or investment partnerships. The simplicity of her coffee shop job became even more precious as a refuge from the new pressures of being known as the family's financial success story. Rebecca continued working at Sunrise Coffee, though she reduced her hours to focus more on her trading activities. She also began exploring ways to use her wealth meaningfully, researching charitable investments and considering whether she wanted to start her own business. The most significant change was in how she saw herself. For years, she'd carried the weight of her family's disappointment, questioning whether she was truly as capable as she believed. Now, with her success acknowledged and celebrated, she felt free to pursue even bigger goals. But late at night, when she reviewed her trades and planned her strategies, Rebecca sometimes wondered what would have happened if her investments had failed. Would her family's love have been conditional on her eventual success? The question troubled her more than she cared to admit. The truth was that proving her worth through her bank account felt both satisfying and hollow. She'd won their respect, but she wasn't sure she'd won their understanding. They saw her wealth, but they still didn't see her vision, her passion for markets and patterns, and the intellectual challenge of trading. Rebecca realized that her journey was far from over. She'd proven she could success financially, but she still had to prove she could use that success to build the life she truly wanted. The coffee shop job had been a symbol of her independence. Now she needed to figure out what would symbolize her purpose. Standing behind the espresso machine during her next shift, watching the morning rush of customers hurrying to their traditional jobs, Rebecca smiled. She'd shown her family that success could look different than they'd imagined. Now she had to show herself what success could become when money was no longer the goal, but simply the tool to achieve something greater. The real test wasn't proving she could make millions. The real test was proving she could make those millions matter. 3 months after the revelation that forever changed her family's perception of her, Rebecca found herself facing an entirely different set of challenges. The initial shock and apologies had given way to a complex web of expectations, assumptions, and uncomfortable dynamics that she hadn't anticipated. What she'd thought would be a simple matter of proving her success had instead opened a Pandora's box of family complications. The first sign of trouble came during a casual dinner at her parents' house. Rebecca had accepted the invitation, thinking it would be a normal family meal, but she quickly realized it was anything but normal. Her mother had invited Dr. Patterson, a financial advisor who worked with several wealthy families in their community. The man sat across from Rebecca at the dining table, his practiced smile and expensive suit clearly intended to impress. "Rebecca, your mother tells me you've had remarkable success with your investments," Dr. Patterson began, cutting into his salmon with surgical precision. "I'd love to discuss how our firm could help you optimize your portfolio management and tax strategies." Rebecca politely declined, explaining that she preferred to handle her own investments. The disappointment on her mother's face was immediate and obvious. After Dr. Patterson left, Susan cornered Rebecca in the kitchen while they cleaned dishes.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
"I don't understand why you won't at least listen to professional advice," Susan said, her voice carrying the edge that meant she was trying to control her frustration. "Dr. Patterson manages portfolios worth hundreds of millions. He could help you grow your wealth even more." "Mom, I've grown my wealth from 15,000 to nearly 3 million without professional help," Rebecca replied, drying a wine glass with careful attention. "Why would I pay someone to potentially underperform what I'm already doing successfully?" "Because you're 22 years old," Susan snapped, her composure finally cracking. "Because no matter how lucky you've been, you can't possibly have the experience and knowledge that comes with decades in the financial industry." The word lucky stung more than Rebecca had expected. After years of careful research, strategic planning, and disciplined execution, being dismissed as merely lucky felt like a slap in the face. She set down the dish towel and faced her mother directly. "Lucky? Mom, do you think I accidentally made millions of dollars? Do you think I just threw money at random investments and somehow stumbled into success?" Susan's expression softened slightly, but her fundamental concern remained unchanged. "I think you're brilliant, Rebecca, but I also think the financial world is more complex and dangerous than you realize. What happens when the next market crash comes? What happens when your investments start losing money instead of making it?" This conversation would repeat in various forms over the following weeks. Rebecca's father forwarded articles about young investors who had lost everything during market downturns. Annie shared stories from her economics classes about the dangers of cryptocurrency speculation. Even Kevin, who had initially been supportive, began expressing concerns about Rebecca's risk exposure. The family's anxiety reached a peak when Rebecca mentioned she was considering investing in a startup company that developed trading algorithms for institutional investors. The dinner table erupted into a cacophony of warnings and objections. "You're going to throw away your money on some technology company that might not even exist in 5 years, Uncle Robert declared, his voice rising with each word. "Rebecca, you need to put your money into safe, stable investments, government bonds, blue-chip stocks, real estate." "Safe investments don't generate the returns I'm getting," Rebecca replied calmly, "and I've already diversified into more stable assets. This startup investment would represent less than 5% of my total portfolio." But her family's fear wasn't really about portfolio allocation or risk management. Rebecca gradually realized that her success threatened their fundamental worldview about how wealth was supposed to be created and maintained. They believed in slow, steady progress through traditional careers and conservative investments. Her rapid success through unconventional methods challenged everything they thought they knew about financial security. The situation became even more complicated when word of Rebecca's wealth spread beyond immediate family. Suddenly, distant cousins who hadn't spoken to her in years were calling with business propositions. Family friends approached her at social events with investment opportunities that sounded suspiciously like scams. Even her coffee shop coworkers began treating her differently once rumors of her wealth reached them. Maria, her manager, pulled her aside one afternoon during a quiet period between rushes. "Rebecca, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Is it true that you're some kind of millionaire?" Rebecca hesitated, uncertain how much to reveal. The coffee shop had been her sanctuary, the one place where she was valued for her work ethic and personality rather than her bank balance. "Why do you ask?" "Because Jake told me his girlfriend heard from someone at your brother's engagement party that you've got millions of dollars in investment accounts," Maria said, her voice a mixture of curiosity and concern. "And if that's true, I need to understand why you're working here for $12 an hour." The conversation that followed was one of the most honest Rebecca had experienced since her wealth became public knowledge. Maria listened without judgment as Rebecca explained her passion for trading, her desire for flexibility, and her genuine enjoyment of the coffee shop environment. But she also expressed concerns about how Rebecca's presence might affect workplace dynamics. "I like you, Rebecca, and you're a good employee," Maria said carefully. "But if the other staff think you're here playing dress-up while they're working to pay rent, it's going to create problems. People are already asking questions." Rebecca understood Maria's position, but the conversation left her feeling isolated in a way she hadn't expected. She'd thought revealing her wealth would solve her problems with family acceptance, but instead it had created new problems with workplace relationships, social dynamics, and even her sense of personal identity. The breaking point came during a family barbecue at Uncle Robert's house. Rebecca arrived to find not just the usual relatives, but also several family friends, business associates, and people she didn't recognize at all. The gathering felt less like a family event and more like a networking opportunity, with Rebecca positioned as the center of attention. Throughout the afternoon, people approached her with various requests and propositions. A family friend wanted her to invest in his restaurant expansion. One of Uncle Robert's business partners pitched a real estate development project. Her cousin Michael's girlfriend asked for advice on paying off her student loans. Everyone seemed to want something from her, and none of them seemed interested in her as a person. The final straw came when she overheard a conversation between her Aunt Linda and Dr. Wong, another family friend. They were standing near the pool, speaking in low voices, but not quite quietly enough. "It's remarkable what Rebecca has accomplished," Dr. Wong was saying, "though I do wonder about the sustainability of her approach. Young people sometimes mistake luck for skill." "That's exactly what concerns me," Aunt Linda replied. "She's become arrogant about her success, refusing professional advice, making risky investments. I worry she's going to lose everything and expect the family to bail her out." Rebecca felt something cold settle in her stomach. These were the same people who had pitied her for working at a coffee shop just months earlier. Now they were questioning her competence and speculating about her future failures, all while benefiting from her presence at their social gatherings. She left the barbecue early, claiming a headache that wasn't entirely fabricated. As she drove home through the Portland evening traffic, Rebecca realized that revealing her wealth had solved one problem while creating several others. Her family now respected her financial success, but they didn't trust her judgment. They were proud of her achievements, but worried about their choices. They wanted to be associated with her success, but they also wanted to control how she managed it. The next morning, Rebecca made a decision that surprised even her. She submitted her resignation at Sunrise Coffee, effective in 2 weeks. The decision wasn't driven by family pressure or social embarrassment, but by a growing recognition that she needed to define her own path forward rather than staying in a comfortable but increasingly complicated situation. Maria accepted her resignation with understanding but obvious disappointment. "I hope this means you're moving on to bigger things, not that you're letting other people's opinions drive your decisions." "It's a little of both," Rebecca admitted. "I've learned that I can't control how people react to my success, but I can control how I respond to their reactions." During her final 2 weeks at the coffee shop, Rebecca began exploring new possibilities for her future. She researched graduate programs in finance and economics, not because her family expected it, but because she wanted to deepen her understanding of market dynamics. She investigated startup accelerators and venture capital firms, curious about the business side of the companies she'd been investing in as a trader. Most importantly, she began developing a plan for using her wealth in ways that aligned with her values and interests. The startup investment that had caused such family controversy became the first step in a larger strategy. Rebecca decided to focus on companies developing financial technology solutions, particularly those aimed at making investment opportunities more accessible to ordinary people. Her research led her to a young entrepreneur named David Kim, who had developed an app that simplified cryptocurrency trading for beginners. His company, CryptoEase, was seeking Series A funding to expand their user base and add new features. The business model was solid, the team was experienced, and the market opportunity was enormous. Rebecca arranged a meeting with David at a downtown coffee shop, ironically the same type of environment where she'd spent the previous year serving customers, rather than conducting business deals. The conversation lasted 3 hours, covering everything from technical architecture to user acquisition strategies to regulatory compliance. "I have to ask," David said as their meeting wound down, "you're pretty young to be making investments of this size. Do you have backing from a family office or investment fund?" "No," Rebecca replied simply. "I'm investing my own money, which I earned through trading and early cryptocurrency investments." David's expression shifted from polite interest to genuine respect. "That's impressive. Most people our age are trying to pay off student loans, not making angel investments." The comment highlighted something Rebecca had been struggling to articulate. Her success had isolated her not just from her family's expectations, but from her entire peer group. While her college friends worried about entry-level salaries and loan payments, she was evaluating investment opportunities and planning financial strategies. The disconnect was both liberating and lonely. After completing her due diligence on CryptoEase, Rebecca decided to invest $200,000 in the company's Series A round. The investment represented careful analysis rather than speculation, based on her understanding of both the cryptocurrency market and the specific challenges facing new retail investors. When she informed her family about the investment, their reactions were predictably mixed. Her father worried about the regulatory risks in the cryptocurrency space. Kevin questioned whether she had enough expertise to evaluate a technology startup. Annie wondered why she was giving money to strangers instead of investing in family business opportunities. Only her mother offered a different perspective, though it wasn't necessarily the support Rebecca had hoped for. "I still think you should be working with professional advisors," Susan said during one of their increasingly frequent phone calls, "but I'm beginning to understand that you're not going to let us protect you from your own decisions." The phrase "protect you from your own decisions" stuck with Rebecca long after the conversation ended. She realized that her family's concern wasn't really about her financial well-being, but about their ability to influence and control her choices. They wanted her to succeed, but only within the boundaries of their comfort zone. This realization crystallized during Thanksgiving dinner, when Rebecca found herself seated at the adults' table for the first time in family memory. The gesture was meant to acknowledge her financial success, but it also highlighted how her family's treatment of her was still conditional on external markers of achievement. Throughout the meal, conversation repeatedly turned to Rebecca's investments, her future plans, and her wealth management strategies. Nobody asked about her personal happiness, her relationships, or her goals beyond financial gain. She was valued for her bank balance, not for her character or potential contributions to the family's emotional well-being. The final course arrived with an unexpected announcement from her father. He stood up, wineglass in hand, to propose a toast to Rebecca's success. "We're all proud of what you've accomplished," he said, his voice carrying the formal tone he used for important occasions. "You've shown us that success can come in many forms, and we're grateful to have such a financially accomplished daughter in our family." The toast felt hollow to Rebecca, emphasizing financial accomplishment over personal growth or happiness. As her relatives raised their glasses and offered congratulations, she realized that her relationships with them had fundamentally changed. She was no longer the disappointing daughter or struggling cousin. She was the family's success story, their proof that the Chen name was associated with achievement and prosperity. But success stories, Rebecca understood, were expected to continue succeeding. There was no room for failure, no tolerance for setbacks, no acceptance of ordinary human struggles. Her family's new respect came with new pressures and expectations that felt almost as suffocating as their previous disappointment. After dinner, Rebecca stepped outside onto her parents' back deck, needing space to process the evening's conversations. The November air was crisp and clear, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and approaching winter. As she stood looking out at the neighborhood where she'd grown up, Rebecca reflected on how much had changed in just a few months. Annie joined her on the deck, carrying 2 cups of hot tea. They stood in comfortable silence for several minutes before Annie spoke. "Do you ever regret telling us about the money?" Annie asked quietly. The question was more perceptive than Rebecca had expected from her achievement-focused younger sister. "Sometimes," Rebecca admitted, "not because I'm ashamed of what I've accomplished, but because it's changed how everyone sees me." "How do you want people to see you?" Annie asked. Rebecca considered the question carefully. "I want them to see someone who took risks and worked hard to achieve her goals. Someone who chose an unconventional path because it aligned with her interests and abilities. Someone who happened to succeed financially, but who has other qualities worth valuing too." Annie nodded slowly. "I think I understand. It's like how I sometimes feel about my grades. People see my GPA and assume that's all there is to me. They don't see the hours I spend tutoring younger students, or my volunteer work at the animal shelter, or the poetry I write in my spare time." The comparison surprised Rebecca. She'd always seen Annie as perfectly comfortable with the family's emphasis on traditional achievement. "I didn't know you wrote poetry." "That's because nobody ever asks," Annie replied. "When you're known for one thing, people stop looking for other things." Their conversation continued for another hour, touching on topics they'd never discussed before. Annie revealed her concerns about choosing a medical career to please their parents rather than following her own interests. Rebecca shared her struggles with isolation and the pressure to continue succeeding at an unsustainable pace. For the first time since revealing her wealth, Rebecca felt understood by a family member. Annie wasn't trying to manage her decisions or profit from her success. She was simply trying to understand who Rebecca was beyond her bank balance. As winter settled over Portland, Rebecca began implementing the next phase of her plan. The crypto ease investment had performed well, validating her thesis about the company's potential. She started researching other fintech startups, building a portfolio of investments that reflected her vision for the future of financial services. But she also began exploring opportunities beyond pure financial gain. Rebecca started volunteering with a nonprofit organization that provided financial literacy education to underserved communities. The work reminded her why she'd been drawn to finance in the first place: the intellectual challenge of understanding complex systems and the satisfaction of helping others navigate those systems successfully. The volunteer work led to an unexpected opportunity. The nonprofit's executive director, Patricia Williams, approached Rebecca about joining their board of directors. The organization was seeking someone with both financial expertise and a genuine commitment to their mission. "We need board members who understand investments and wealth management," Patricia explained during their lunch meeting. "But we also need people who remember what it's like to feel uncertain about financial decisions. Your background gives you both perspectives." Rebecca accepted the board position, seeing it as a way to contribute her skills while maintaining connection to people whose financial situations were more typical than her own. The work provided perspective on how unusual her success had been and how much luck had played a role alongside her skill and effort. Her family's reaction to the board appointment was revealing. Her parents were pleased that she was associating with other successful professionals and contributing to a respected organization, but they seemed less interested in the organization's mission than in the social prestige of board membership. "It's exactly the kind of community involvement that will enhance your reputation," her mother said approvingly. "Patricia Williams is very well connected in the nonprofit world. This could lead to other board opportunities with even more prominent organizations." Rebecca realized that her mother still didn't understand her motivations. The board position wasn't about networking or reputation building. It was about using her resources and knowledge to address problems she cared about solving. But explaining this distinction would likely lead to another conversation about Rebecca's unconventional priorities. As the year drew to a close, Rebecca found herself reflecting on the unexpected journey that had brought her to this point. 12 months earlier, she'd been serving coffee while secretly managing a growing investment portfolio. Now she was an angel investor, nonprofit board member, and the family's designated financial success story. The external markers of progress were undeniable. Her investment portfolio had grown to nearly $3.5 million. Her startup investments were showing promising returns. Her family treated her with respect and sought her advice on financial matters. But the personal cost of that success was becoming equally clear. She'd lost the simplicity of her coffee shop job and the anonymity that had allowed her to explore her interests without external pressure. Her family relationships had improved in some ways while becoming more complicated in others. Her social circle had shifted to include more wealthy and professionally successful people, but fewer who shared her values or understood her background. Most significantly, Rebecca was beginning to understand that financial success was just the first step in a much longer journey. Having money solved certain problems while creating others. It provided opportunities while imposing responsibilities. It opened doors while closing off certain experiences. Standing in her apartment on New Year's Eve, looking out at the Portland skyline sparkling with celebration, Rebecca made resolutions that had nothing to do with financial returns or investment targets. She resolved to maintain relationships with people who valued her for reasons beyond her wealth. She committed to pursuing opportunities that challenged her intellectually and contributed to causes she believed in. She promised herself to remember that money was a tool for building the life she wanted, not the ultimate measure of her worth as a person. The year ahead would test all of these resolutions as Rebecca navigated the complex terrain of young wealth, family expectations, and personal authenticity. But for the first time since revealing her financial success, she felt confident about the direction she was heading. She had proven she could make money. Now she needed to prove she could make that money matter in ways that reflected her true values and aspirations. The journey from family disappointment to family success story was shorter than she'd expected. The journey from financial achievement to personal fulfillment, Rebecca suspected, would take much longer. But as she watched fireworks light up the winter sky, she felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Her phone buzzed with text messages from family and friends, offering New Year's wishes and checking in on her plans. Among them was a message from Mariah, her former coffee shop manager, who had taken a new position with a regional restaurant chain. "Hope you're doing something amazing tonight. You deserve all the success coming your way." Rebecca smiled at the message, remembering the simple satisfaction of making excellent coffee and connecting with customers during busy morning rushes. That version of her life seemed both distant and immediate, a reminder of how quickly circumstances could change while core values remained constant. She typed back a response. "Thank you. Hope you're celebrating too. The new job sounds perfect for you." As midnight approached, Rebecca realized that the most important lesson of the past year hadn't been about investment strategies or family dynamics. It had been about the difference between external validation and internal confidence. Her family's approval felt good, but it couldn't substitute for her own sense of purpose and direction. The clock struck 12, and Portland erupted in celebration. Rebecca raised a glass of champagne to herself, toasting not just another year of financial success, but another year of learning who she was beyond her bank balance. The real adventure, she understood, was just beginning. 2 years had passed since Rebecca first revealed her wealth to her family, and the landscape of her life had shifted in ways she couldn't have predicted. What began as a simple desire for recognition had evolved into something far more complex and ultimately more meaningful. The journey from family disappointment to financial success had been straightforward compared to the path she was now navigating, learning to build a life of genuine purpose while managing the responsibilities and opportunities that came with substantial wealth. The transformation hadn't been linear or easy. There had been setbacks, misunderstandings, and moments when Rebecca questioned whether revealing her success had been worth the complications it created. But as she sat in her new office overlooking the Willamette River, preparing for a board meeting that would determine the future of 3 different organizations, she felt a sense of clarity about her direction that had been absent during her coffee shop days. Rebecca's investment portfolio had grown to over $5 million, but that figure had become almost secondary to her other activities. Her angel investing had evolved into a systematic approach to supporting financial technology companies that served underrepresented communities. She'd backed 12 startups in the past 18 months, focusing on companies that develop tools for financial literacy, micro-investing, and accessible credit solutions. The success of these investments surprised even Rebecca. CryptoEase, her first angel investment, had been acquired by a major financial services company for 8 times her initial investment. Two other portfolio companies had completed successful Series B funding rounds, significantly increasing the value of her stakes. But more important than the financial returns was the impact these companies were having on their users. Rebecca had insisted on board seats or advisory roles with most of her portfolio companies, not to micromanage their operations, but to ensure they remained focused on their social missions as they scaled. She'd seen too many promising startups lose their way as they pursued rapid growth at the expense of their founding principles. This hands-on approach had led to recognition within the fintech investment community. Rebecca found herself invited to speak at conferences, participate in panel discussions, and mentor other young investors. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was now considered an expert in the same field her family had once dismissed as glorified gambling. The speaking engagements brought unexpected challenges. Rebecca discovered that her youth and unconventional background made her an object of fascination among established investors who couldn't quite categorize her. She was too young to be a traditional angel investor, too successful to be dismissed as a lucky amateur, and too principled to fit the stereotypical image of a wealth-focused venture capitalist. At a fintech summit in San Francisco, Rebecca found herself on a panel discussing the future of retail investing alongside 3 men who had decades more experience and billions more in assets under management. The moderator introduced her as the millennial who turned cryptocurrency trading into angel investing, a description that made her cringe with its oversimplification. During the panel, one of her fellow panelists, a managing partner at a prestigious venture capital firm, questioned whether young investors like Rebecca truly understood the long-term implications of their investment decisions. The comment was politely phrased, but carried an unmistakable tone of condescension. Rebecca's response was measured but firm. I think the question isn't whether young investors understand long-term implications, but whether established investors understand how rapidly the financial landscape is changing. The companies I invest in are building solutions for problems that didn't exist when traditional investment strategies were developed. The exchange highlighted a tension Rebecca had been grappling with throughout her investment career. The financial industry was simultaneously fascinated by her success and skeptical of her methods. She was invited to participate in exclusive events and opportunities, but often felt like a curiosity rather than a peer. This dynamic extended to her family relationships as well. Her parents had fully embraced their daughter's success and frequently mentioned her achievements in social settings. But Rebecca sometimes felt that their pride was more about her wealth and recognition than about her actual work or values. The complexity of these relationships became apparent during Kevin's wedding to Sarah. The ceremony was held at an exclusive resort in Napa Valley, and Rebecca's attendance was treated as a significant social coup by her relatives. Throughout the weekend, she was introduced to other guests as the investment prodigy or the millionaire entrepreneur, descriptions that emphasized her financial success while ignoring her other qualities. During the reception, Rebecca found herself cornered by a group of Kevin's medical school friends who peppered her with questions about cryptocurrency investments and stock picks. None of them seemed interested in her perspective on healthcare technology or her work with financial literacy nonprofits. They wanted tips for quick profits, not insights into sustainable wealth building. The conversation was interrupted by Sarah's father, a successful orthopedic surgeon who had been observing from across the room. Dr. Mitchell approached with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to being the most successful person in any gathering. "Rebecca, I've been hearing remarkable things about your investment activities," he said, his tone friendly but appraising. "Sarah mentioned you might be interested in a medical device startup I'm involved with. Perhaps we could discuss it later." Rebecca politely agreed to the conversation, but she felt a familiar frustration building. Even at her brother's wedding, she couldn't escape the assumption that her primary value lay in her ability to provide capital or investment advice. She wondered if her family truly saw her as a person or simply as a resource to be leveraged. The medical device conversation took place the following morning over breakfast. Dr. Mitchell presented his opportunity with the polished enthusiasm of someone who had clearly pitched investors before. The company developed surgical instruments with enhanced precision capabilities, targeting a market worth billions of dollars. Rebecca listened carefully, asking detailed questions about the technology, the competitive landscape, and the regulatory pathway. Her due diligence process had become more sophisticated over the past 2 years, incorporating lessons learned from both successful and unsuccessful investments. After an hour of discussion, Rebecca provided her assessment. While the technology was impressive and the market opportunity was real, the company's business model relied too heavily on relationships with established medical device distributors. She was concerned about their ability to compete with larger companies that had deeper resources and existing market presence. Dr. Mitchell's reaction revealed his expectations about the conversation. He had clearly assumed that Rebecca would be impressed by the opportunity and eager to invest. When she politely declined, citing specific concerns about market positioning and competitive dynamics, his demeanor shifted noticeably. "I think you might be overanalyzing this," he said, his voice carrying a hint of irritation. "Sometimes the best investment opportunities require taking calculated risks rather than waiting for perfect conditions." Rebecca recognized the subtext. Dr. Mitchell believed that her success had been primarily due to luck rather than skill, and that his medical expertise gave him superior insight into healthcare investments. The conversation ended cordially, but Rebecca left feeling once again that her judgment was valued only when it aligned with others' expectations. These interactions had taught Rebecca important lessons about managing relationships while maintaining her investment principles. She'd learned to separate personal connections from business decisions, even when that separation disappointed people who expected preferential treatment. The most significant test of this principle came when Uncle Robert approached her about investing in his commercial real estate development company. Robert had been expanding his business and needed additional capital to pursue a major project in downtown Portland. The opportunity was substantial, potentially generating significant returns if executed successfully. Rebecca spent weeks analyzing the investment from every angle. She reviewed financial statements, examined market conditions, and consulted with independent real estate experts. The conclusion was clear. While Robert's company had been successful in the past, the proposed project carried risks that didn't align with her investment criteria. The conversation with Robert was one of the most difficult Rebecca had experienced since becoming the Scumingus investor. She explained her concerns about the project's location, timing, and capital requirements. She offered specific suggestions for reducing risk and improving the business plan, but ultimately she declined to invest. Robert's reaction was immediate and emotional. "Rebecca, this is family. We've supported you through everything, and now when we need help, you're treating us like strangers." The accusation stung because it contained a grain of truth. Rebecca's investment standards were rigorous, and she applied them consistently regardless of personal relationships. But Robert interpreted this consistency as betrayal or ingratitude. "I'm not treating you like strangers," Rebecca replied carefully. "I'm treating this like a business decision, which is what it needs to be. Mixing family relationships with investments is how people lose both their money and their families." The conversation escalated into a broader discussion about family loyalty, financial responsibility, and the obligations that came with wealth. Robert accused Rebecca of becoming arrogant and disconnected from her roots. Rebecca defended her right to make independent decisions about her own money. The argument ended without resolution, creating a rift that took months to heal. Other family members took sides, with some supporting Robert's position that Rebecca should prioritize family loyalty over investment criteria. Others backed Rebecca's right to make independent financial decisions. The incident forced Rebecca to confront a fundamental question about wealth and family relationships. Did her success create obligations to support family members' business ventures? How could she maintain close relationships while preserving her independence and financial principles? She found guidance in an unexpected source, a wealth management seminar for young inheritors and entrepreneurs. Rebecca had initially been skeptical about attending, assuming it would be filled with trust fund recipients dealing with problems she couldn't relate to. Instead, she discovered a community of people navigating similar challenges around family dynamics, social expectations, and personal responsibility. The seminar's facilitator, Dr. Emily Rodriguez, was a psychologist who specialized in working with families affected by sudden wealth. During one session, she addressed the exact dilemma Rebecca was facing. Wealth creates power dynamics that can destabilize even strong family relationships, Dr. Rodriguez explained to the group. The key is establishing clear boundaries while maintaining emotional connection. You can love your family without feeling obligated to fund their every venture. Rebecca found this perspective liberating. She'd been struggling with guilt about disappointing family members who sought her financial support. The seminar helped her understand that maintaining boundaries wasn't selfish, it was necessary for preserving healthy relationships. Armed with this insight, Rebecca began implementing a more structured approach to family financial requests. She established a family foundation with a specific annual budget for supporting relatives' legitimate needs. The foundation provided emergency assistance, educational funding, and startup capital for well-researched business ventures. But the foundation operated according to formal criteria and application processes, removing emotion and guilt from financial decisions. Family members could apply for support, but they had to demonstrate genuine need and sound planning. The approach wasn't perfect, but it created clarity around expectations and reduced the personal tension associated with financial requests. The foundation's first major decision involved funding Annie's graduate school expenses. Annie had decided to pursue a master's degree in environmental science rather than continuing with pre-med courses. The decision disappointed their parents, who had invested significant emotional energy in Annie's medical career path. Rebecca's foundation provided full funding for Annie's graduate program, but only after Annie completed a detailed application explaining her career goals and financial projections. The process helped Annie articulate her motivations and develop a concrete plan for using her degree. "Thank you for taking my goals seriously," Annie told Rebecca during a quiet conversation at a family dinner. "Mom and Dad think I'm making a mistake, but you actually listen to what I want to do with my life." The comment highlighted a shift in Rebecca's role within the family. She was no longer just the successful daughter whose achievements reflected well on the Chen name. She had become a resource for family members who felt constrained by traditional expectations, particularly Annie and some of their younger cousins. This evolution was most apparent during a conversation with her cousin Jennifer, who was struggling with pressure to pursue a business degree despite her passion for social work. Jennifer approached Rebecca not for financial support, but for advice about following an unconventional career path. "You proved that success doesn't have to look like what our parents expect," Jennifer said during their coffee shop meeting. "How did you find the courage to stick with your own vision?" Rebecca realized that her greatest impact might not be through her investments or wealth, but through her example of pursuing personal fulfillment over family expectations. She began mentoring several younger family members, helping them develop confidence to pursue their own interests rather than conforming to predetermined paths. This mentoring work led to a broader initiative. Rebecca partnered with her financial literacy nonprofit to develop a program specifically for young adults from high-achieving families. The program addressed unique challenges faced by people whose families had strong expectations about career choices and financial success. The program's first cohort included 15 participants, aged 18 to 25, all from families with substantial resources or professional achievements. The curriculum covered financial independence, career exploration, family boundary setting, and personal goal development. Rebecca co-facilitated several sessions, sharing her own experience of navigating family expectations while building financial independence. The participant stories resonated with her own journey, though their specific circumstances varied widely. One participant, Marcus, was the son of successful attorneys who expected him to continue the family's legal tradition. Another, Sarah, came from a family of physicians and felt pressure to pursue medicine despite her interest in environmental activism. A third, David, was struggling with guilt about using his family's wealth to support artistic pursuits rather than traditional business ventures. Through these conversations, Rebecca gained perspective on her own choices and their broader implications. Her success had given her a platform to influence others, but it had also created responsibilities she was still learning to navigate. The program's impact extended beyond the individual participants. Several went on to pursue careers that aligned with their personal interests rather than family expectations. Others developed strategies for maintaining family relationships while asserting independence. Most importantly, they created a support network for people facing similar challenges. This work brought Rebecca recognition from the broader philanthropic community. She was invited to join the boards of several organizations focused on youth development and financial education. Each opportunity required careful evaluation to ensure alignment with her values and availability for meaningful contribution. Rebecca accepted a position on the board of a national organization that provided college scholarships for first-generation students. The role connected her with educators, policymakers, and other philanthropists working to expand educational access. She found the strategic discussions energizing and the mission deeply meaningful. Her involvement with the scholarship organization led to an unexpected opportunity. The Department of Education invited Rebecca to participate in a task force examining barriers to financial literacy education in public schools. The appointment was prestigious and would provide a platform for advancing policy changes she believed in. The task force work required significant time and energy, including travel to Washington, D.C. for monthly meetings and regional consultations. Rebecca had to reduce her involvement with some investment activities and delegate more responsibilities to the management team she'd assembled. This delegation marked another evolution in Rebecca's career. She was no longer managing every aspect of her investments personally. Instead, she had built a team of analysts and advisors who shared her values and could execute her investment strategy while she focused on higher-level activities. The transition required letting go of control in ways that felt uncomfortable initially. Rebecca had built her success through hands-on analysis and decision-making. Trusting others to make investment decisions on her behalf required developing new skills around leadership, communication, and accountability. The process was made easier by the quality of people she'd been able to attract. Her investment manager, Christina Park, had previously worked for a major foundation and shared Rebecca's commitment to impact investing. Her research analyst, James Wilson, had experience with fintech startups and understood the sector's nuances. Together, the team had systematized Rebecca's investment approach while maintaining its core principles. They developed formal criteria for evaluating opportunities, standardized due diligence processes, and created reporting systems that kept Rebecca informed without requiring her constant involvement. This infrastructure allowed Rebecca to pursue larger and more complex investment opportunities. She led a $3 million Series A round for a company developing financial planning tools for freelance workers. She participated in a syndicated investment supporting a microfinance platform serving rural communities in developing countries. Each investment reflected Rebecca's evolving understanding of how capital could address systemic problems rather than just generating returns. She was building a portfolio that aligned with her values while achieving strong financial performance. The success of this approach attracted attention from institutional investors who were exploring impact investing strategies. Rebecca found herself consulting with family offices, foundations, and pension funds that wanted to incorporate social impact criteria into their investment processes. This consulting work was rewarding intellectually and financially, but it also highlighted the contrast between Rebecca's approach and that of traditional institutional investors. Many were interested in impact investing primarily as a marketing tool or risk management strategy, rather than as a core commitment to creating positive change. Rebecca learned to navigate these conversations carefully, identifying clients who shared her genuine commitment to impact while avoiding partnerships that would compromise her principles. She developed a reputation for being selective but highly effective, particularly with organizations that wanted to move beyond superficial impact investment approaches. The culmination of this work came when Rebecca was invited to speak at the annual conference of the Global Impact Investing Network, one of the industry's most prestigious events. Her presentation focused on the integration of financial returns with social impact, using her own portfolio as a case study. The response was overwhelmingly positive, leading to speaking invitations at other major conferences and requests for media interviews. Rebecca found herself profiled in business magazines, featured on financial podcasts, and quoted in articles about the future of investing. This public recognition brought opportunities and challenges. Rebecca's profile attracted interest from potential investors who wanted to participate in her deals. It also brought scrutiny from regulators and journalists who wanted to understand her background and methods. The attention was simultaneously gratifying and overwhelming. Rebecca had achieved recognition for her work and impact, but she sometimes missed the anonymity that had allowed her to focus purely on the work itself. Every decision was now subject to public commentary and analysis. The pressure intensified when Rebecca was approached about launching her own fund to institutionalize her investment approach. Several potential investors offered to commit substantial capital to a Rebecca Chen-led fund that would invest in financial technology companies serving underrepresented communities. The opportunity was tempting on multiple levels. A formal fund would provide significantly more capital to deploy, potentially increasing her impact. It would also establish her as a fund manager rather than just an individual investor, lending institutional credibility to her work. But the fund structure would also change the nature of her work fundamentally. She would have fiduciary responsibilities to limited partners, regulatory obligations to securities authorities, and operational requirements that would consume significant time and energy. After months of consideration and consultation with advisors, Rebecca decided to decline the fund opportunity. The decision surprised many people who assumed she would want to scale her impact as much as possible. But Rebecca had learned to prioritize alignment with her values over external measures of success. Instead of launching a fund, Rebecca chose to expand her angel investing through a family office structure that would allow her to continue making independent decisions while providing additional capital to deploy. The approach maintained her flexibility while enabling larger investments in companies she believed in. This decision reflected Rebecca's growing confidence in her own judgment and priorities. She was no longer seeking validation from external sources or trying to meet others' expectations about what success should look like. She had developed a clear vision for how she wanted to use her wealth and influence, and she was willing to make decisions that supported that vision even when they disappointed others. The family office structure proved to be the right choice. Rebecca was able to lead several significant investments that might not have been possible through her previous individual approach. She co-led a $10 million Series B round for a company developing artificial intelligence tools for financial planning. She invested in a startup creating blockchain-based solutions for international remittances. Each investment reflected sophisticated analysis and strategic thinking while maintaining focus on social impact. Rebecca had evolved from an individual trader to a serious investor to a thought leader in impact investing, all while staying true to the principles that had guided her from the beginning. The journey had changed her relationship with her family as well. Her parents now treated her as an adult with expertise and judgment worth respecting. Kevin sought her advice on investment decisions and career transitions. Annie consulted with her about graduate school choices and career planning. Most importantly, the family had developed a new dynamic that acknowledged different definitions of success. Rebecca's path had shown that achievement could take many forms, encouraging other family members to pursue their own interests rather than conforming to predetermined expectations. During a recent family gathering, Rebecca reflected on how much had changed since that graduation party, where she'd first felt the sting of her family's disappointment. She was now successful by any measure they valued, but more importantly, she was fulfilled by her own standards. The conversation at the dinner table ranged across various topics: Kevin's plans to start a family, Annie's research on renewable energy policy, their parents' upcoming retirement planning. Rebecca's investments and business activities were mentioned, but they weren't the central focus of attention. This normalization felt like the greatest achievement of all. Rebecca had proven that she could succeed financially, but she had also shown that financial success was just one aspect of a meaningful life. She was valued for her judgment, her principles, and her contributions to causes she cared about. As the evening wound down, Rebecca's father approached her with a question that surprised her with its vulnerability. "Rebecca, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Do you think we failed you as parents by not supporting your choices earlier?" The question reflected years of evolution in their relationship. Rebecca considered her response carefully before answering. "You raised me to be independent, analytical, and principled," she said. "Those qualities served me well, even when they led me down a path you didn't initially understand. I think you did the best you could with the information you had." Her father nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I'm proud of what you've accomplished, but I'm more proud of who you've become. You've shown integrity throughout this journey, even when it would have been easier to compromise." The conversation represented a full circle from those early days when Rebecca felt invisible to her family. She was now seen and valued for who she truly was, not just for what she had achieved. As Rebecca drove home through the familiar Portland streets, she reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought her to this point. She had started with a simple goal of proving her worth to her family. Along the way, she had discovered purposes and possibilities she never could have imagined. Her phone buzzed with notifications from various portfolio companies, nonprofit organizations, and speaking engagements. Each message represented opportunities to deploy capital, share knowledge, or contribute to causes she believed in. The scope of her activities had expanded far beyond anything she had envisioned during her coffee shop days. But the fundamental motivation remained the same. Rebecca wanted to use her resources and abilities to create positive change while staying true to her own values and principles. She had learned that success meant different things to different people, and that the most important measure was alignment between her actions and her beliefs. The future held new challenges and opportunities. Rebecca was considering a run for the city council, believing that policy changes could amplify the impact of her philanthropic work. She was also exploring the possibility of writing a book about her investment philosophy and its social impact applications. Whatever direction she chose, Rebecca felt confident that she had built a foundation of relationships, resources, and expertise that would support meaningful work for years to come. She had proven that young people could achieve significant financial success through unconventional paths. More importantly, she had demonstrated that such success could be leveraged for broader social benefit. The transformation from family disappointment to respected investor and philanthropist had been complex and sometimes painful, but it had also been profoundly rewarding, providing Rebecca with opportunities to contribute to causes she cared about while maintaining the independence and authenticity that had always been important to her. As she pulled into her apartment parking garage, Rebecca felt grateful for the journey that had brought her to this point. She had achieved financial success beyond her wildest dreams, but she had also discovered purposes and relationships that gave that success meaning. The future was filled with possibilities, and Rebecca felt ready to embrace whatever challenges and opportunities lay ahead. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.